Here's your host, Dennis Rimmer.
Welcome back. Yes, it's another edition of Talking Books and Writing and Stuff. And here we are. And today we have Jacob Wren talking to us from the Montreal area. His new book is Dry Your Tears to Perfect Your Aim. So, starting off, Jacob, again, thank you very much for taking some time to talk with us today.
Thanks so much for having me.
Perfect. And I've got I'm sure I'm not the first person to ask this, but the title of the book, Dry Your Tears to Perfect Your Aim. Can you explain that, please, and where you came up with it and how it came to be?
Yes, it is a quote from a poem, and now I just want to make sure I have the poet's name right, which I should have had ready before because I did not know that would be the first question. A quote from a poet from Nicaragua, Daisy Zamora. And I first read it in a book called Risking a Somersault in the Air, Conversations with Nicaraguan Writers by Margaret Randall. And reading that book was a very strange experience for me because when I first picked it up, I thought the Nicaraguan Revolution, the Zapatista Revolution, not the Zapatista, the Nicaraguan Revolution would have inspired them all to new feats of like literary imagination. But when I actually read the book, I found it was the opposite. In a way, they had all stopped writing and taken more practical government positions involved in educating people and feeding people. And so I had this idea that the revolution would create like lots of innovative art, but in fact what it did is forced writers to stop making art and instead focus on practical matters, which is in some way one of the themes or questions of the book. And yeah, the title is about, yes, if you're crying and you're trying to, fight oppression, maybe the tears will hurt your aim, so you need to find some sort of clearer way of looking at the world in order to make change.
Right, to clear your mind and then get on with the task at hand instead of sort of
Yes.
wallowing in your depression, as it were. Right.
Yes.
Okay, so the book is called, as we know, Dry Your Tears to Perfect Your Aim. So, why did you write this book?
I mean, there were a couple different impulses at the beginning. One impulse was quite a long time ago when I turned on the television and saw the U.S. bombing Iraq in the so-called shock and awe campaign. And it just seemed to me like maybe one of the most violent things I had ever seen on television. But kind of counterintuitively, instead of not wanting to be there, it gave me a very strong desire to go there and see for myself. Which I did not do. Instead, I wrote about it. I imagined it because I think going there would have, for Westerners to go to these war-torn countries often does more harm than good in a kind of war tourism. But nonetheless, this act of imagining myself going and what kind of dilemmas might arise while there was a kind of a first spark of the book. And the second spark of the book was reading an article by David Graeber, the anarchist anthropologist, about visiting Rojava, the three cantons of Rojava in northern Kurdistan, where they were doing a kind of anarchist political experiment. And in that article, he says, like, we can either dismiss what they're doing and saying it's not a real revolution, or we can say maybe it is a real revolution and how do we support it.
And
this idea of like going to, and yeah, go ahead.
yeah, no, I was just saying that's like you said. So you're not the depressed writer who went to a war zone then.
No, but I'm the depressed writer who imagined what it would have been like if he had gone to the war zone.
So the book, Dry Your Tears to Perfect Your Aim, has a unique format to me in that there's lots of short and shorter paragraphs that are broken up with some white space. How did you come up with that, or was that a choice from editors, maybe, or is that the
No,
way you thought about it?
I've done that with all my books. Apparently, it's called island typesetting.
Oh,
And yeah, I mean, it echoes some kind of more experimental books that are, the books that mean the most to me, where maybe the paragraphs are more, isolated thoughts or scenes. In my book, I use it for continuous scenes, but I suppose it appeals to me as a mode of formatting because it kind of references the experimental writing that meant the most to me.
And later on in the book, the main character talks about a letter he got from a student, and it's when he gave a speech, not useful to be surrounded by like-minded people. Can you sort of further explain that quote?
Yeah, I think this is a kind of truism or even a cliche that
Right.
if you're only around people who think the same as you, it will kind of narrow your thinking, and it's necessary to be exposed to people who have completely different ideas or completely different experiences or completely different ways of seeing the world in order to broaden one's perspective.
Right, and so you can't always watch Fox News and expect to learn the truth, or you can't always watch CBC or CTV and expect to learn the truth. You have to sort of, like you said, broaden things out and see why the other guys are talking and saying the things they do, and what you can learn or maybe not learn from all of that. Is that what you're thinking?
Yes, and not only watching things, but meeting people and having conversations that are maybe uncomfortable, but in the long run, give you a different idea of what, and also hearing things you disagree with, and then you have to understand why you disagree with them, and that also helps you understand your own thinking.
Gotcha. And you've been writing and publishing and doing other things for quite a long time. So on the business side of things, have you run across something? What do you think is the most unethical practice in the publishing industry today, if there is one?
I don't know. There's many unethical things. I don't know what is the most. Certainly, if I think of racialized writers I know or BIPOC writers I know, the fact that every publishing house or almost every publishing house is run by a white person makes their life maybe less open and less energizing than it would be if that wasn't the case.
Gotcha. Well, like we said earlier, you got to surround yourself by different kinds of people, not like-minded people. So
yes, and
yeah.
it's not enough to have the people running the publishing houses be white and the interns be racialized. There needs to be progress made at all levels of publishing houses.
So when you look back on your career, what do you think are some of the common pitfalls that aspiring writers fall into, or that have talked to you about it?
Well, I think I'm an autodidact. I'm self-taught. I didn't go to any sort of school. I just started writing and publishing as a teenager and never stopped. And I feel often young writers who go through these MFA programs maybe fall into a certain MFA voice or MFA style that make them too similar to each other, and maybe block them from finding their own unique thing that no one else is doing in the world. And so very often, the writers I most like after they graduate need to kind of unlearn what they were taught in school and go against maybe some of the things they were told to do or encouraged to do to find out, the other way.
Gotcha. And Jacob Wren is with us. The book is Dry Your Tears to Perfect Your Aim. I'm assuming, like most writers, you read a lot. So here's a question. In your reading life, are there writers at first you kind of didn't like or dislike, but then you came to appreciate them as time went on?
So many of the writers I liked from the first moment I discovered them. But maybe I'll just talk about my favorite writer, Rene Gladman, who has a new book out this week called My Lesbian Novel. Is that right? Yes, My Lesbian Novel, out from Dorothea Publishing Project. And I've always loved Rene Gladman, but My experience of reading her, I'm sure I've read every word she's ever written, is that at the beginning I liked it and thought it was good, but I'm astonished how she keeps getting better and better over time, which is not, for me, not the case with all writers. Every time I read a new book by her, I kind of am pleased and shocked by the fact that she's taken another leap forward or step forward. And she's one of the few writers who I just like more and more over time. I must have been reading from her for about 30 years.
And speaking of writing, have you found over the years that your writing has changed in certain ways?
Yes, I feel it has changed so much. I still think of myself as an experimental writer, but more and more I feel people don't read me that way. If I think of like reviews I got 25 years ago, it was all about how experimental it is, and that's now no longer the focus. I think people now much more focus on what I'm trying to say and not in the way I'm saying it, which I think is and not something I've done on purpose. I've just kept doing the same thing I always do, which is start a book, I don't know where I'm going, and I try and surprise myself. And just by following this same method over time, somehow the books have gotten more substantial, and people read them differently.
And you're with Book Hug Press for this book. How did your connection to Book Hug Press come about?
I have now done 5 books with Book Hug. And I'm not sure I'm so proud of this story, but because it's a kind of nepotism. But I have a friend, Malcolm Sutton, who is an editor at Book Hug, and it's a long time ago, but maybe 20 plus years ago, I used to stop for coffee every morning at Euro Deli on my way to work, which is a cafe and pizza place that went out of business about 15 years ago. And Malcolm was always sitting in the window writing. And eventually I met him, and we realized we loved a lot of the same books. And then the first book I did with Book Hug, Polyamorous Love Song, in 2014, had just been turned down by, I don't know, about 50 publishers in Canada and the US. And I was telling Malcolm how many people had turned it down. And Malcolm said, I just started working at Book Hug. Maybe we can do it there. So it is, I don't like these backroom nepotism kinds of things, but I love working with Malcolm. He's like the best editor I have ever worked with by far, so I'm very happy to have done so many books with him.
Well, hey, why not? You got to get your foot in the door, so to speak, somehow, so you might as well, talk to your friends about it and see what happens from there. Why not, right? So the book is Dry Your Tears to Perfect Your Aim by Jacob Wren. The cover is striking with a sort of an airplane. I guess it'll be a bomber flying through a cloud of orange. And then there's a purple popsicle. Tell us about the popsicle. How'd that come about?
Yeah, well, this is a spoiler alert. I don't know how many spoilers I should do in these interviews, but at one point, the unnamed narrator in this book ends up in a very bad situation. And there's a kind of a military person who is making his life very, very miserable. And at first he gives this military person the nickname the General. And then after a while he thinks that nickname is making him more miserable, so he changes the nickname to the Popsicle, which allows him to kind of laugh at the person torturing him, and gives him a somewhat lighter view on his whole situation.
That's a great story, and the book is a great book. It's Dry Your Tears to Perfect Your Aim by Jacob Wren. Couple more questions, Jacob. What are you hoping in your wildest dreams this book will accomplish?
My perspective on that is I believe in the long game, and I'm in this for the long run. And I just want with each book I publish to increase my readership. I don't know, by, a few readers each book. And I feel that steadily happened. My first book was in 1998, and not very many people read it. and the one after that was read by more people. And with each book, I feel I have more readers. And they tell their friends, and then they go back and read my previous books. And just in general, I'm writing because I want to be read, and I want to have, a slowly but steadily increasing number of loyal readers who want to read all my books and want to stay with me on this crazy journey.
That's right. Do you ever Google yourself by any chance?
Way more than I should admit on the radio.
Okay. Okay, that's fine, because I do it too. So,
Yes.
Jacob Wren, what's next for you?
I'm working on another book right now called Desire Without Expectation. And it's hard to explain, but it's a kind of spiritual quest where a narrator who is both me and not me, like the narrator in Dry Your Tears, is maybe doesn't believe in God and is trying to see if that could change in any way.
Got it. Well, we'll look forward to that. This has been a quick talk with Jacob Wren, Dry Your Tears to Perfect Your Aim. So thanks for taking some time out today to talk with us, Jacob.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for visiting with us today. This is Talking Books and Stuff with Dennis Rimmer. Contact him at dennis@talkingbooks.tk. Thank you, and may all the good news be yours. Oh, and don't forget to check out his book, The Great Canadian Notebook, available across Canada and at amazon.ca.